Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Roots of Evil,
Hmm.
Harsh Reality. That's the excerpt. And
Definitely a title that grabs your attention.
yeah, and I think it's right there in the title, right?
Yeah.
Harsh Reality.
Right.
So we're going to be talking about some pretty sensitive stuff today and trying to dig into this question of
Yeah.
where does the mindset of a rapist, originate? Where does that even come from?
Well, I think the excerpt, it kind of starts off. It starts off with a bang.
It does, yeah.
It's not pulling any punches. It says straight up, people get outraged by these crimes, understandably.
Yeah.
But then everyone kind of forgets about it after a while, right? And a lot of times these guys, the criminals, they don't even face any real consequences.
Yeah, it paints a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, is this like cynicism or is this actually just a reflection of reality?
I think it's a good question to ask. And, I think one of the things that jumped out at me was how the excerpt then goes on to list all these potential societal influences on a rapist's mindset.
Yeah.
And it's a long list, right? It's everything from family and friends to media and even religion.
Right. It's like the author is saying, look, the roots of this evil are
It's everywhere.
tangled up in everything around us. Yeah.
And it's nobody gets a pass here. There's this one line I thought was really powerful. It says,
Yeah.
the underlying philosophy behind all our actions, in fact, our very existence is flawed.
Whoa,
It's a sweeping statement,
yeah, it is.
but it really makes you stop and think.
It does.
Are we all in some way
Yeah.
contributing to a culture where this can happen?
It's a lot to unpack for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it takes this turn inward.
Yeah.
It asks this really direct question. It says, is it justifiable to inflict pain or death for own gratification or lust?
Right.
It's like the author's holding up a mirror, like you said,
Yeah.
forcing us to look at that potential for darkness in ourselves.
Yeah, that monster within.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because then the author goes on to talk about self-realization and self-education
Yeah.
as these
Right.
potential solutions.
Right.
It's about recognizing that, okay, change starts with us examining our own beliefs, understanding how those beliefs could be feeding into this culture where this kind of violence is happening.
Yeah, I think that's really important because it's easy to just point fingers,
Right, yeah.
to blame society or the media or whatever. But this is saying, hey, look inward first.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the
Yeah.
author also proposes something
That's
really controversial,
right.
public execution as a deterrent.
Oh, wow.
And I know it's a really difficult thing to even think about.
Yeah.
The ethical implications are huge,
Of course.
but the author's argument is that it would instill fear and actually prevent future crimes.
It's a tough one.
It is.
And I mean, the excerpt doesn't really get into the nuts and bolts of how that would actually work.
Right.
But it does raise that question of how do we balance, the need for justice with maybe that desire for revenge?
Absolutely.
And what role should punishment really play
Right.
in stopping these things from happening again?
Right. It's heavy stuff. And then the excerpt ends on this really haunting note.
Okay.
Everyone knows of the monsters inside themselves, but instead of killing it, they're consuming some stupid content every day and nurturing it.
It's chilling.
It is, right.
Yeah.
It's like this stark reminder that, hey, we all have the capacity for both good and evil.
Right, and I think what the author's getting at there is that
Yeah.
those unchecked desires, that exposure to harmful content,
Right.
it can really cultivate those darker tendencies.
It's almost like we're feeding the monster.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the question becomes, how do we navigate a world that's just saturated
Right,
with this kind of content?
that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah. How do we make sure we're not the ones feeding that monster within? Yeah. This whole deep dive has been...
It's been a journey.
It has, yeah.
On Darkwing.
Into some really uncomfortable territory.
Yeah.
We've talked about societal influences. We've talked about that potential for darkness that we all have inside us. We've talked about the challenges of finding solutions.
Right.
And if, like the excerpt says, everyone has that seed of darkness, it really makes you wonder, what can we do as individuals, as a society,
Yeah.
to create a world where this kind of violence just doesn't happen?
It's a question we all need to be asking ourselves, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah,
That's a question I hope, everyone listening will keep thinking about.
absolutely.
It's not an easy one, but it's an important one.
Very important.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our deep dive for today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.